This is a panel interview. It is different than a debate. It certainly is not a debate. And we appreciate you being here to subject yourselves to our questions. I am the moderator. I will not be participating in the questions. It's my job to make sure the time is run efficiently and that all of the rules are adhered to. One thing that we do ask, because this is a panel interview and not a debate, is that you do not refer to your other candidate in any kind of a negative way. That's not what we're after. And specifically, if that does happen, it will count against you with the voting, and we may give an opportunity to the other candidate to rebut whatever is said. And so we'd ask that you be civil, and we do appreciate that very much. The setup for this panel interview is that we will give each candidate a 1.5 minute introduction where you can say whatever you like. After that, each panelist, for as much time as we have, will be given 30 seconds for a question, and you will be given 1 minute exactly for your response. And I would ask that when I do say time, please, that you respect that. I don't mind you finishing your sentence, but please don't go anything beyond that. There will be no follow-up questions from the panelists, and so we will go down the line, and if we can start, Miss Ellsworth, Judge Ellsworth, if you could start, please, with your introduction.
Good afternoon. I'm Carolyn Ellsworth, District Court Judge in Department 5. I came to Nevada in 1979 as a new lawyer out of Southwestern Law School, and where I had taken the bar and passed the California bar in 1979, and then Nevada in 1980. I came to join the District Attorney's Office, where I served as a Deputy District Attorney until 1990. I tried approximately 100 jury trials while I was a Deputy and Chief Deputy District Attorney. The last 5 years I was a Chief Deputy District Attorney in charge of the Major Fraud Unit. In 1990 I was hired by Mirage Resorts to be their Chief Litigation Counsel, and I did that for 10 years, doing all of the litigation for Mirage Resorts, subsidiary operating companies, so Golden Nugget, Treasure Island, Mirage, Bellagio, etc. In-house, their civil litigation, also their workers' compensation litigation, and I supervised all of the out-of-state litigation. In 2000, I left to enter private practice, and I was in private practice 7 years, doing primarily employment litigation on the plaintiff's side, representing employees in employment litigation and discrimination cases, age, race, Americans with Disabilities Act, etc. Also, of course, I was running my own business while I was in private practice. In 2007...
Time, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we also have Nevada Assemblyman William Horne. Is it Horne or Horne?
Horne.
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 Thank you. I just want to get it correct. I'm sorry.
No problem. Not a mistake. Good afternoon. Stated, my name is William Horne. I first moved here in 1969. My father was in the Air Force, came here when I was 7 years old, and from Panama, originally born in Texas, but I've been here ever since. I attended UNLV, both my bachelor's degree and my law degree are from UNLV. I have been serving in the Nevada State Legislature since first elected in 2002. My roles in the legislature have been as chairman of parole, probation, corrections, and judiciary committee, as well as I'm currently the majority leader in the Assembly. I also chair law and criminal justice at the National Conference of State Legislators. I am in private practice, where I practice in criminal defense, family laws, and general litigation. I've also worked in civil firms doing both construction litigation and workers' comp litigation. And I will leave it at that. I look forward to your questions and welcome the opportunity.
Thank you very much. We will start with our questions, and we'll start with Ms. Shogard.
Hi, Hi, Judge, how are you?
Thank you.
I just wonder about the search warrant process. When officers come to the court, and I understand it can be any hour of the day because I know the judge I work for, Judge Marshall, sometimes gets woken up many times during the night. Do you sit down and read each temporary order or temporary arrest report? Or do you just sign it because you trust the police officer and he's standing in front of you?
All right, so search warrants can either be written presentations or telephonic. The statutes provide for both. And so if it's a telephonic warrant, it's done, the representations, the affidavit by the officer who is seeking the warrant would be sworn. I would swear him in and he would have to make the representations. In a written search warrant, the same is done, but it's presented to me in writing. And absolutely, I read every word of the search warrant because that's my job.
Okay, thank you. And was there a question for Mr. Horne as well?
Oh, I don't know Mr. Horne.
Okay.
I
Thank
just don't know what to ask you.
We'll go to Ms. Bosley then.
Good afternoon, Judge Ellsworth.
Good afternoon.
Describe the most challenging ethical dilemma that you've encountered and how did you handle it?
As a judge or,
As a judge.
well, I don't feel like I've had any ethical dilemmas that have been presented to me. I look at every case and apply the law to the facts of the case, and I rule on the law and the rules of evidence. And as long as you do that, it doesn't present an ethical dilemma. I, of course, recuse myself from all cases that, for instance, my husband, who is a lawyer, been married 34 years, and he's a partner in a major firm. He's on my automatic recusal list, which conforms with the canons. And otherwise, I just have not had any ethical dilemmas.
And for Mr. Horne?
Horne, based on your experience, I got a question for you. What are the characteristics and the qualities you believe are important for a judge to have or possess?
Well, I believe that a judge, first and foremost, needs to have integrity in doing their job. Needs to be fair in their deliberations with counsel. Opposing counsels are across the aisle from each other, and both of them have their different perspectives on what the case is supposed to be about, the motions that are presented before the judge. And that judge is supposed to rule by the law, not by their personal beliefs and mores, but by what the Constitution and our statutes provide for. I think that that's the most important thing. And I've had that dilemma doing legislation. Sometimes things come before you that you believe in your gut are right or wrong, but the Constitution says something else, and you have to be able to rise above that and do the right thing.
Thank you. Ms. Karen Stewart?
I'm going to pass this.
Ms. Bapp?
I think it'd be pretty loud.
Yes, we're recording.
All right, so, all right, there we go. All right, so this is for Mr. Horne. In the case of, practicing law, how do you separate between being an assemblyman and going out there and representing a client who may be at one point a lobbyist?
Well, it has been a challenge being both a practicing attorney and an assemblyman. For a while, I was one of the few that was doing both. But it's easy when I represent a client, That's my job. Whenever I walked into a courtroom, I've never walked into a courtroom as Assemblyman William Horne. Even though many people would recognize me, I'm there to represent my client to the best of my ability and how law provides. I've never had an issue with that. And for example, being a criminal defense attorney, I've had some of them look at me and stand by some of the bills that I've supported in the legislature and say, "Oh, you're killing us," you know. And I say, "This is my job. I'm a legislator right now, and I'm trying to pass laws to protect our community." So I found it fairly easy to do.
Okay. We'll go on to Ms. Knight, please.
My question's for both candidates. What is your guys' understanding of all of the special courts, drug court, veterans court, mental health? What do you believe is the process? What do you believe is the process? Do you support it? Do you not support it? At what end do you actually try to push for certain things? Just a kind of general idea of your guys' understanding on these courts, even if your belief system and how you kind of will or do determine how you approach those issues.
We could start with Ms. Ellsworth.
Thank you. The specialty courts are a very important part of our justice system because we're trying to divert people out of a system where they could be going into prison and try and keep them out if we can. That's the goal. And of course, each of the specialty courts have certain criteria that Judge Bell has set for acceptance into each of the courts. So, and that's coupled, of course, with the statutory requirements, although we try to get people in more than keep them out. I mean, that's our goal. And sometimes I've advocated I'll go and speak to Judge Bell and say, will you take this person back into drug court? I've had a hearing, and these are the reasons. I know you terminated him or her before, but will you take him back into drug court? So they're very important tools in my toolbox when I'm trying to keep someone from ruining their life, frankly, and not being successful on probation.
Please. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe the specialty courts serve important value to our community in that it's a judicial intervention. It's a way of not having one cookie cutter way of dealing with certain offenders, sending them to jail, sending them to prison. And these specialty courts intervene because these particular offenders have special problems, because whether it's mental illness, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's from their service in the military and they're dealing with, all three. These courts are important in intervening and breaking that cycle of going into incarceration, coming out, going back in again. And it's important for judges to be mindful of that. There are other ways besides incarceration to deal with offenders and certain offenders. And so I've always supported it. I even did an externship in undergrad in court. Thank you.
This question is for both candidates. What have been your top priorities for the past year?
I'm not sure to say my top priorities for this past year have been raising my children. My son's in the back of the room, and my daughter, who will be 9 in the summer, will be 11. That's been my top priority. And secondly, has been making this a transition from legislative life to my private life as an attorney, and doing that. And that's been my top priorities. And now nothing else comes close.
Thank you. Ms. Ellsworth.
Well, my top priority over the past year has been trying to get a balance between my work as a judge and my personal life and with my family, which is very important to me because I work so many hours being a judge. We have a very crushing workload, and so I take work home with me virtually every night. This morning, I spent all morning working, preparing my criminal calendar, which I will hear at 9 o'clock on Monday morning. And so that's that and figuring out how to get the housework done, which that's kind of sliding, I tell you.
Thank you. Is your husband still here?
He is.
Oh, so Mr.
Mylana.
Mylana.
My question is for Assemblyman Horne. Do you have a unique background as a legislator and a lawmaker? So maybe can you explain a little bit how your experience will help you as a judge if you're elected in November as someone who interprets and applies the laws who helps me?
Thank you. Thank you. I believe it helps me in the lengthy time that I've spent in the legislature. I've been able to serve on just about every committee in the legislative process. I think short of natural resources. And I've chaired a number of them, and as a majority leader, then you oversee much of what's going on in all the committees. You understand the legislative process and intent of many laws, and I think I can apply that when sitting on the bench and interpreting laws and seeing the arguments that council brings to me and how these laws came about and the rationale for that. I think that will help me immensely in that regard.
Thank you. You have a question, Ms. Ellsworth, as well? Ms. Green?
Right. Mr. Horne, you have children, and so I'm just curious, what do you fear the most after seeing all of these criminal cases in your experience? Do you fear the lack of education within the community? Do you fear psychological health? Do you fear drug use? And what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give to your children as a defense mechanism coexisting in this society?
Wow, that's a tough one. You know, as a parent, oftentimes our minds run rampant of the fears we have in raising them. I fear that I don't do an adequate enough job in making them aware of the dangers out there. We can't always protect them as much as we want to, but what we can do is we can prepare them for the world that awaits them. And in preparing them is being forthright, honest with them, and also giving them the tools like a solid education and access to everything that's necessary for you to be a stable and productive member of society. And me and their mother are hands-on parents.
Time,
And
please.
that's the advice that I would give, be hands-on parents.
Please, thank you. Do you have a question for Ms. Ellsworth?
Would you answer the same question, please?
I think I got a little lost on what the question was.
Would you repeat the question,
Responding to.
please?
Okay. A lot of the crime that you see being committed it's more of a symptom of the product of being part of the society, just to kind of paraphrase. So what advice would you give, and what defense mechanisms, given the types of crimes that you've seen presented before you?
Correct, and I 2 days a week I do my criminal calendar where I'm sentencing people in felony, gross misdemeanor cases. And so I review pre-sentence investigation reports on all of those cases before I impose sentence. And the common denominator that I see is lack of education. Basically what you see are these kids, and some of them aren't kids anymore, but for a large part they are. They're under 30 years old, and they don't have a high school diploma. Some of them have dropped out at 10th grade and below. So this is a terrible problem in our community, and what it leads to is an inability for people to have legitimate forms of work and an income, and so they turn to crime and everything else that comes with that. And the second thing that I see is methamphetamine is a terrible poison in our community, and it just is a horrible scourge, and it leads to all kinds of other crime, and it's something we really need to address.
was going to say time, but you finished that with half a second to go. Thank you very much. Ms. Carroll?
Yes. Judge Ellsworth, what are your views on emotional decisions versus strict legal statutes? And what role does emotions play with the defendant or plaintiff when rendering the decisions in your courtroom?
It's very important that a judge does not let emotion play too big a part. I mean, no one is a stone. I don't say that I am a stone and have no heart, of course, and you have to have empathy in certain situations. But one of the things that every trial a jury is instructed on is that your decision is not to be based on sympathy or public opinion, but upon these rules of law, and you're to exact equal justice between the parties, be it the state of Nevada or in a civil case, the plaintiff and the defendant. And so I try and not allow emotion to override my decision that has to be based on the law, because it's the rule of law that's the most important thing.
Thank you. And if I could interrupt just one moment. If the audience is going to speak, we'd ask that you step out. We are recording, and it is interfering with the recording. So please, if you're going to speak, please step out. Thank you. Ms. Carroll?
I have a question for Mr. Horne, or Assemblyman Horne. Have you ever had a case that's backfired on you? And if so, what did you learn in the process?
I don't know if I've ever had a case quote unquote backfire, but I once had a client right before sentencing. I gave him advice on how to address the court before his sentencing, and it could have gone one of two ways. And gave him this advice in front of his family and everything, and then he went and did the exact opposite and got the end result I told him was going to happen if he went that way, and then he looked right at me and was surprised. And but I learned that oftentimes your clients are going to be they're going to be who they are, and at the end of the day, and I can only do so much. And I believe that's probably the same as, as judges. Judges would probably tell you, she's probably giving people breaks and then find them right back in front of her again. Sometimes they're going to do what they're going to do.
Please. Mr. Brooks.
Thank you to both of you for showing up today to do this panel and opening yourself up to the public like this. In full disclosure, I must say that Judge Ellsworth's husband and I have known each other for about 22 years. We took martial arts together and come out a lot. So when the panel votes for this specific seat, I will not be casting a vote. Okay. But what I'd like to ask both of you, Assemblyman Horne and Judge Ellsworth, considering the fact that you do have kids and your schedules are insanely busy, what do you do to keep yourself connected within the community? Do you volunteer at your kids' schools? I have kids. I go to wrestling events with them and help out as much as I can with them. What do you do to keep yourself within the community to understand all the problems that everybody's dealing with, besides what you see in your courtroom?
Let's start with Mr. Horne.
I do volunteer at my kids' school, mostly in speaking engagements. The principal has asked me on a number of times to come and speak to classes in school, which I do at a number of schools. Whichever school calls me, whether from high schools all the way down to elementary school, have called me to come speak to their classes, and I do that on a regular basis. In addition, I'm a regular when I can be at my kids' basketball games and volleyball games, and my kids, when they were doing taekwondo through their black belts, I was there taking my beating along with everyone else doing that. So that's how I stay in touch. Obviously, since being elected and running, I can't do as much as I used to do. That's how I do it.
Thank you. Ms. Ellsworth.
Thank you. Well, in addition to being a judge, and then I do volunteer with the transitioning practice with the young lawyers, and as a volunteer judge and court competitions and trial advocacy. But I'm also a master gardener, certified master gardener through the University of Nevada Cooperative Extension. I took 80 hours of classroom training for that, and I go out and teach people how to garden in Southern Nevada. I speak in the evenings, and I man a table and answer questions about gardening. I'll be at Tivoli, a little plug, at Tivoli on March 1st, the first and third Saturdays of every month, answering your gardening questions.
Thank you. I could teach you how to kill a plant.
Might have we'll be going some new plants out here soon.
Yeah. Now, Dr. Dupere. I'm trying very hard. Please.
Take some French class.
Please. I did, actually.
Hey, Judge Ellsworth, I think I met you at Tivoli Village. I'm very involved in gardening also. And I think you talked about the ADA or ADAAA. We're having a slew of litigants now who are developing what is called legal abuse syndrome, which is a very specific type of PTSD because of protracted litigation. Any idea how that can be addressed to prevent it?
Well, representing clients for many years, yes, that was one of the things I would counsel people that would come to see me in initial consultations. Are you prepared? You're coming to my office, you say you want to sue somebody. Are you prepared to be involved in a litigation process for the next 2.5 years, which is speedy? And do you realize what an emotional toll that can take on you? So the court is attempted to, through, of course, alternative dispute resolution, and once cases are in district court, through our voluntary and mandatory settlement programs, where judges hear settlement conferences in cases that are not their own. Those help relieve some of that, but I can see that it could have that type of result, absolutely.
Do you have a question for somebody? Okay. Thank you very much for being here. We've gone through the entire panel in time. Thank you so much. We very much appreciate it.